Greetings again everyone, and now it's time for something completely different, a new full-frame manual focus 50mm f1.4 lens from TTArtisan, but this time with a tilt mechanism. It's rare to see that on a lens with such a bright maximum aperture, and can lead to some very artistic looking images if you tilt the lens against your subject, leading to wildly out of focus backgrounds. But if you tilt the lens in sympathy to your subject, then you can get the plane of focus to line up nicely with whatever you're shooting, and that could be helpful for product photography, as you can see here, where you want a nice plane of focus to run along the edge of your subject. Getting the tilt just right in practice will definitely involve some trial and error, but it's also kind of fun and allows you to manipulate your image in a potentially useful way. These pictures will give you a good idea of what to expect, and when shooting at f1.4, some pretty extreme results can be your reward for experimentation. This interesting lens is coming out for a variety of mounts for mirrorless cameras, and I'll put its price in the description below. I'd like to thank TTArtisan for sending me a Sony E-mount copy of this lens for evaluation, although as usual this is a totally independent review. Let's start things off by taking a look at its build quality. The lens looks and feels pretty tough, like it'd easily survive a knock or two, and at 450 grams it has a bit of weight to it. As I mentioned, it's a totally manual lens, manual focus and manual aperture control. The lens does not have weather sealing, and there's a large gap between the mount and the rear element to make room for the tilt mechanism. And here it is in action. It's loosened and tightened by a large dial on top of the camera. The way it works is a little loose and wobbly, to be honest, but it can be tightened into the appropriate position fairly precisely, giving a reasonably strong tilt. The rotation of the tilt can be adjusted too, as you can see here, with a little tightening screw on the side, but only 90 degrees around, which can be a little awkward if you're trying to get to a certain angle. Really, the mechanism is a bit fiddly here, but you do get there in the end without too much trouble. The manual focus ring has deep grooves for plenty of grip, and it turns very smoothly with plenty of precision. The lens does exhibit some moderate breathing as you focus in and out, as you can see, but I've actually seen worse than this before on a 50mm optic. Then we get an aperture ring which turns very smoothly. While I wish it had some gentle clicks to it to help with stills photography, at least it's spaced out nice and evenly. The aperture mechanism has 12 iris blades to it. The lens comes with a slip-on cap which seats itself nice and firmly onto the front, and the filter thread size is 62mm wide. The lens does not feature image stabilization or any other electronics. Overall, this is very standard build quality for a low-priced Chinese manual focus lens, tough with very smooth controls. Alright, let's see about image quality now. I'm testing it on my Sony a7R III with its 42MP full frame sensor. No in-camera corrections are available with this lens. At f1.4, in the middle of the image, we see softness, low contrast and some purple fringing, a pretty bad start. Corner image quality is extremely soft at f1.4 with even more colour fringing. Ouch. At f2, there's a little more brightness and contrast in the corners. Back in the middle, we see loads more contrast and the purple fringing is gone, but sharpness is still a little low. However, stop down to f2.8 to see excellent sharpness appearing in the middle now. Corner image quality is beginning to pick up, except for right in the very edges. f4 looks much better, and at f5.6 and f8 we finally see great sharpness in the corners of the image, and f11 looks even a little sharper. Stop down to f16 though, and a little softness begins to emerge due to the effects of diffraction. Okay, well, you saw for yourself that this is not a lens with good technical image quality. It's one of the softest I've seen for a while, although as normal, stopping down to f8 or so sharpens up the entire image. Alright, let's take a look at distortion and vignetting on a full frame camera. We see some moderate barrel distortion here, and pretty dark corners at f1.4. At f2 and f2.8, that vignetting is pushed right up into the corners, giving much more even illumination. There's something else here that I'd like to show you. If you tilt the lens to its extreme, then in the furthest edges you get a lot of extra vignetting. Here it is at f1.4, and as you stop down, for example, to f16, those far edges turn completely black. Not good. To remedy this, you'll simply have to reduce the lens's tilt. Okay, let's move on and look at close-up image quality. The lens can focus down to 50 centimeters, further than usual for a 50mm optic. Close-up image quality is disastrously soft here at f1.4. At f2, it gets a little better. At f2.8, sharpness is much better, and at f4, close-up image quality is finally up to spec. Still, a very poor performance here. Let's see how well the lens works against bright lights now. Again, it's not a good show. There's plenty of flaring and glaring to be seen in pretty broad patterns. While we're working in the dark, let's take a look at chroma levels. At f1.4, bright points of light in the corners of your images display chroma smearing that's out of control, some of the worst imaginable. It's somewhat reduced at f2, and at f2.8 and f4 it's mostly gone. Let's zoom out and take a look at sun stars. I only noticed any proper ones after stopping down to f11, and even then, there's nothing really impressive to be seen. Let's take a look now at the quality of this lens's bokeh. Deeply out of focus backgrounds look nice and smooth here. However, backgrounds in the middle distance look messier, with some ugly colour fringing. Tilt your lens and you'll obviously get much more out of focus backgrounds, or on one side anyway, but they will look busier. So if I were being kind, I'd say that the backgrounds on this lens are an acquired taste. And finally, related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. At f1.4 it's hard to see here due to the poor close-up image quality. Here's f2 and f2.8 where you can see a little colour fringing is sticking around on bokeh highlights. Even at f4 or f5.6 traces of it are still visible. Ouch. Overall, well, it's lovely that TTArtisan sent me this camera lens for testing, but my first loyalty is always to my viewers, and obviously I have to report to you that this is actually one of the worst performing 50mm lenses I have ever tested, which is obviously a real shame. However, when you stop it down to f8 or so, it does still offer plenty of sharpness, and the tilt feature is undoubtedly useful. I can actually imagine a lot of people getting pretty creative with this optic. Shooting at f1.4 with the lens shifted gives you an artistic effect, and stopping down and tilting could really open up some nice product photography options for you, among other imaginative uses. So it is a lens where you really need to be aware of its limitations, but if you do take them into account, then it opens up some interesting opportunities. Gee whiz, that was a strange lens. Even if the technical image quality was poor, well, it's still nice to see manufacturers trying something a bit different. Anyway, I hope you found this review interesting. If you find my videos helpful, then check out my Patreon page, where I love to treat my supporters to all kinds of exclusive bonus content. There's loads of stuff down there already. Check it out and see you again next time.